A young hunter lay on the cold ground in Montana with a 400-pound grizzly bear on top of him. And in that terrifying moment, he remembered one strange detail from a magazine article he had read years earlier. And the question that flashed through his mind was simple. Could that unusual advice actually save his life? Welcome to Learn English with True Stories. Today you will hear a remarkable real survival story, and while we follow the events step by step, you will also learn natural English words and expressions used in everyday conversation. Our story begins with Chase Delwo. He was born in Montana in the United States and grew up in a place where forests, mountains, and wild animals were part of daily life. By 2015, he was 26 years old and working as a mechanic. Like many people in that region, he loved hunting and spending time outdoors. Autumn in Montana is elk season. Hunters often walk for hours through quiet forests, listening for sounds and looking for tracks. On October 2015, Chase decided to go hunting with a close friend in an area not far from Glacier National Park. That morning started like many others. The air was cool, the ground was damp, and the forest was calm. Both men moved slowly through the trees, watching the ground and listening carefully. Let's look at that word for a moment. Damp means slightly wet. For example, the towel is still damp after washing. Anyway, the forest around them felt peaceful, almost too quiet, and very soon that quiet would disappear. As they walked deeper into the trees, the two men separated for a short time. This is common during hunting. One person moves one way and the other moves another way, so they can cover more ground. You might hear this quite often. Cover ground means to move through an area while searching or exploring. For example, they walked fast to cover more ground. Chase moved slowly along a slope covered with bushes and fallen branches. The wind moved gently through the trees. Nothing seemed unusual. Then, suddenly, everything changed. Without warning, a large grizzly bear appeared just a short distance away. It had been resting in the brush, and Chase had walked almost directly into its space. Here is a useful phrase. Without warning means something happens suddenly, with no sign before it. For example, the storm started without warning. For a split second, Chase froze. The bear stood up and looked directly at him. Both of them were surprised. Before we continue, froze, in this situation, means he suddenly stopped moving because of fear or shock. For example, she froze when she saw the snake. What happened next took only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. The grizzly charged toward him. A quick note about charged. When an animal charges, it runs forward very fast in an attack. For example, the bull charged across the field. Chase tried to react, but there was almost no time. The bear reached him in seconds and knocked him to the ground. The impact was powerful. His rifle fell from his hands, sliding across the dirt. Chase felt the bear's weight pressing down on him. Let's quickly explain that phrase. Knock someone to the ground means to hit or push someone so they fall down. For example, the strong wind knocked him to the ground. At that moment, Chase knew he was in serious danger. Grizzly bears are extremely strong animals, and many people who face them do not survive. The bear bit down on his arm. Chase tried to stay calm even though fear rushed through his mind. That's an interesting word, rush through. When a feeling rushes through you, it moves quickly and strongly inside your body. For example, relief rushed through her when she heard the good news. While lying there, Chase's thoughts moved quickly. Should he fight back? Should he stay still? Many people say you should play dead during a bear attack. That means lying still so the bear thinks you are no longer a threat. Let's look at that expression. Play dead means to pretend you are dead so an animal stops attacking. For example, the small animal played dead to escape the predator. But something inside Chase told him the situation was getting worse. And then, in the middle of this chaos, his mind remembered something strange. Several years earlier, he had read an article in a hunting magazine. The article described a survival idea. If a bear attacks and nothing else works, a person could push an arm down the bear's throat to trigger its gag reflex. Before we go on, gag reflex means the body reaction that makes someone cough or choke when something touches the back of the throat. For example, the doctor checked his gag reflex during the exam. It sounded crazy. Even Chase knew that. But lying under the bear, with seconds to act, he realized he might not have another chance. Here is a common phrase. Run out of time means there is no time left to act. For example, they ran out of time before finishing the test. The bear continued to bite and push him into the dirt. Chase felt his strength fading, so he made a decision. Instead of pulling his arm away, he pushed it deeper into the bear's mouth. Let's look at that phrasal verb, pull away, means to move something back or remove it quickly. For example, she pulled her hand away from the hot pan. At first, it felt like a terrible idea. His arm was already inside the animal's mouth. But Chase forced it farther back. That's a useful phrasal verb. Force something back means to push something strongly in the opposite direction. For example, he forced the door back open. His hand reached deep into the bear's throat. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, suddenly, the bear reacted. It began to cough and pull its head away. The reaction was powerful and immediate. Before we continue, pull away means to move back from something quickly. For example, the dog pulled away from the loud noise. The gag reflex had worked. The bear stepped back, coughing and shaking its head. For a few seconds, it seemed confused. Chase did not waste that moment. You might hear this expression often. Waste a moment means to lose time when quick action is needed. For example, she did not waste a moment and called for help. Using every bit of strength he had left, he rolled away from the animal and tried to move down the slope. That's a useful phrasal verb. Roll away means to turn your body and move sideways on the ground. For example, he rolled away from the falling rock. The bear watched him. For a few seconds, the forest was silent again. Then, slowly, the animal turned and walked back into the trees. Chase could hardly believe it. Let's pause on that phrase. Hardly believe means something feels almost impossible to accept as true. For example, she could hardly believe she won the prize. His arm was injured, and his body hurt from the attack. But he was alive. And now he had another problem. He needed to find his friend. That's a useful verb. Locate means to find the position of someone or something. For example, the police tried to locate the missing phone. Chase stood slowly and looked around the forest. The ground felt unsteady under his feet. Still, he began walking. You might hear this expression, push through the pain, means to continue even though something hurts. For example, the runner pushed through the pain to finish the race. After a short distance, he saw his friend in the trees. The friend noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Are you okay?" the friend asked. Chase answered with surprising calm. "A bear attacked me," he said. That calm voice hid the shock he was feeling inside. Let's look at that word. Shock means a strong emotional reaction after something sudden or frightening. For example, he sat quietly, still in shock. Together they moved quickly toward their vehicle. Every step felt slow, but they kept going. Here is a helpful phrase. Make your way means to move slowly toward a place. For example, they made their way through the crowd. During the drive to get help, Chase finally had time to think about what had happened. His mind returned to that strange magazine article. Years earlier, when he read it, the idea seemed unusual, maybe even impossible. Yet, in the worst moment of his life, that small piece of information came back to him. Let's explain that phrase. Come back to someone means a memory returns to the mind. For example, the answer came back to him later. Doctors later treated his injuries. The wounds healed with time. But the story spread quickly across news reports and outdoor magazines. People were amazed that such an unusual idea had actually worked. Here is a good word. Amazed means very surprised. For example, they were amazed by the result. Experts later explained that the gag reflex is very strong in many animals. When something touches the back of the throat, the body reacts automatically. That reaction likely caused the bear to release him. Let's look at that verb. Release means to let something go or set it free. For example, she released the bird from her hands. Even today, Chase often says that survival in the wild is unpredictable. Many situations depend on luck, timing, and quick thinking. Here is a phrase you might hear often. Think on your feet means to make a quick decision in a difficult situation. For example, good firefighters must think on their feet, and that is exactly what he did. In a moment of extreme danger, he remembered one strange detail, trusted his instinct, and acted immediately. Sometimes, survival comes down to a single decision. Before we finish, let's look at one last expression. Come down to means the final result depends on something specific. For example, the game came down to one final shot. In Chase Delwo's case, survival came down to one unexpected memory from a magazine article. Stories like this remind us how unpredictable life can be. If you enjoy learning English through real stories like this one, consider subscribing to the channel and following along with future episodes. Here, we explore fascinating real events and true crime cases, while helping you grow your English naturally, one story at a time.